Good morning, St. Joseph's, and good morning, Glenn. Please bear with me a second.
Good morning.
So, St. Joseph's, good morning to you. If you can see my screen and hear my voice, could you use the chat facilities to let me know, please? If you put your cursor towards the bottom of the screen, you'll see a little menu bar pop up, and there you will see the chat icon. If you press on that, you'll be able to type into the little box. Sorry, I'm typing as I speak, which is naughty of me. And I can't even spell St. Joseph's. So there we go, that's better. You can type in the box and say hi, and you can hear my voice and see my screen. Everything well at your end, Glenn?
Yeah, I can hear you well, Chris.
Brilliant. I can see the screen as well. It shouldn't matter that you can, but I think you can see the screen, yeah.
Sorry, Chris, I dropped off the Wi-Fi for a sec there, I think. I lost you for a minute.
Okay. I would say you can see the screen. You see our screen said if you're an engineer, what would you do? Yep. Brilliant. Okay, we're expecting 4 schools on. It's about 125 pupils, I believe. And they're all primary schools.
Okay.
But we're all very early this one, which is good. So we've got 10 minutes to sort of work. So, St. Joseph, are you there yet? If you are there and you can hear me, please could you use the chat facility to let me know? If you put your cursor towards the bottom of the screen, a little menu bar will pop up. You see the chat icon, press on that and you'll see there's a message there for you. And if you can just type in that you can hear my voice and see the screen, much appreciated. Good morning, Tranmore. If you can hear my voice and see my screen, could you let me know using the chat facility, please? If you put your cursor towards the bottom of the screen, a little menu bar will pop up. You'll see the chat icon, press on that and say hi, that I'm just typing you a message. Hi, can you hear me, Tranmore, Mr. Scallon? Tranmore, can you hear me? St. Joseph's, can you hear me? Alan, can you hear me? Mr. Hodgson, can you hear me? Glenn, can you still hear me? You can still hear me, good. I was just getting a bit worried that nobody could hear me, but
I had to manually join the audio when I did sign in, though. It wasn't.
Well, the school should be okay because the microphone, they've got little microphone icons next to their icons, so they should be able to hear.
Ah, yeah.
St. Joseph's and Tranmore, I've just sent you a little chat message. Please could you let me know if you can hear me and see the screen? Thank you, Tranmore. Phew, I was getting a bit worried. So St. Joseph's, can you hear me? Tranmore, can you see the screen as well, which says if you were an engineer, what would you do? Well, St. Joseph's, can you hear me? Can you see my screen? Ah, yes, you can hear me? Wonderful. And can you see the screen which says if you were an engineer, what would you do? Wonderful, that's perfect. Phew. Again, I was getting a bit worried that you couldn't hear me. Fabulous. So we expecting another couple of schools, but they're cutting it very fine. So well, it's 10:30 now according to my computer. So I think we probably should get started. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen, and we shall begin. So we'll start off. Say hi, everybody. I'm Chris Noon. I'm the project coordinator for the Leaders Award, and this is what I call I am an engineer. This is what I do. And it's a live online engineer event. And today we're featuring Glenn Mitchell, who's a senior project engineer. But before Glenn starts, I'll just tell you how the next hour or so will proceed. Glenn will give his presentation first, and he'll share his screen and hopefully his webcam, and his presentation will last about a quarter of an hour. And then we have the Q&A session where we ask teachers to type in their pupils' questions into the chat facility, and Glenn will then read them out and give his answers, hopefully. I'm sure he will. We're booked until 11:30 in this little chat room thing. So it may not take that long. As we only have 2 schools on, it may not take that long, but we'll see how it goes. And after the event, please feel free to send any feedback you may have to me, and I'll pass it on to Glenn. And obviously, if it's really good and about me and things like that, I'll keep mine as well. So without further ado, I'm going to pass you over to Glenn. It's Glenn Mitchell. As I said, he's a senior project engineer at Network Rail. So it's all yours, Glenn, if you want to start sharing your screen, etc.
All right, thanks, Chris. Hopefully people can see me. Good morning. My name's Glenn Mitchell. As Chris said, my name's Glenn Mitchell. I'm a senior project engineer and I work for Network Rail. I'm based at Clapham Junction in London, so I cover the whole of the southeast. So we've got quite a big area. As I said, my background is mostly signalling. I do a little bit of electrical work as well. And I've put together a presentation for you, which I'm going to share with you now, just to show sort of my background, what I did before, how I got into engineering, what I do and why I enjoy it. Hopefully that's come up now.
Yeah, it did. It has gone.
Excellent. So as I said, I'll go through my career as an engineer. And just for people who wouldn't know, that little ING at the bottom there next to my name, that means I'm an incorporated engineer. That means I've had to go through an interview and sit with somebody who's a professional engineer to get that qualification, which says I am an engineer and I am allowed to call myself an engineer, which I'm quite proud of. So what made me an engineer? Well, I've always loved the railway. Ever since I was little, my mum and dad used to take me to a bridge near where I used to live. We used to go and stand and wave at the train drivers and they'd toot the horn back. And it just kind of took off from there, really. I've always had an interest in that kind of thing. You've got a picture of me there, driving a train near where I grew up, a place I go back to occasionally now. And on the right, that was when I was volunteering in Wales, volunteering to work on the trains, which was a really good thing. And I met some really good people doing that. I've always enjoyed building and making things. So I don't know about anybody watching, if you've ever had, like, I loved Playmobil. I used to build little construction sites out of Playmobil and Lego in my bedroom, and I used to wind my parents up really a lot because they'd walk into my bedroom and fall over it, stand on it and hurt their feet, and they didn't like that. So I don't know if anybody's done that. It is quite amusing when you get older, you talk about it. But I just used to love making things and construction. It always interested me. I like organising things. So one of the things you do as an engineer, you have to be quite organised. So I have to talk to a lot of people. I bring together a lot of people that do different things. So I speak to people who work with track, other people from electrification and signalling, operations, the people that make the trains go. We work a lot with them. So a couple of pictures there on the screen now, that they were from a couple of charity concerts I've organised, which I really enjoyed as well. So things I did, the guys in that other photo with me are some of my railway friends, other engineers that I've worked with. I still talk to quite a lot now as part of my job and outside of work as well. So how did I get into engineering? Well, I went to school in a place called Woking, which is in southeast England. It's not far from London. I did all the same sort of subjects you'll all be doing. Math, the really important ones for me were maths, obviously science, and a little bit English as well for what I do. Now, I have to be honest with most of you, I absolutely hated maths. I found it really boring. I'm sure some of you probably do, but you might not want to tell your teachers. But I really didn't like maths. But it's for what I do now, what I've found is, although I don't necessarily use everything I did in maths, it taught me a lot of logic skill that I apply to the work I do. So it was a really important thing. And I actually think now, when I think back to what I did at school, and I realise that was something that I did and that I use now, even though I wouldn't have thought that when I was at school. Obviously science, because I'm kind of in an electrical engineering type role, the science and the physics kind of side of it, where you might do circuits, you might wire up light bulbs and things like that in your classes in science. That's really, really relevant to what I do. And I put English there as well because I have to read a lot of things and write a lot of things as well. I have to write papers and things like that for people. So when I finished my secondary school, I went to sixth form college, study A-levels. I did, German is the last one there. That's not really relevant to what I do. That was just something I enjoyed. But I did electronics and business studies. So obviously electronics is really, really relevant to what I do. A lot of the things we work with are electronics, especially in signalling. It's really sort of small electrical components. It was a subject I was really interested in, and I really enjoyed studying that. And business studies I put there. So that might not sound like something that's really engineering related, but where I work, it's not all construction and building things, making things. As an engineer, I also have to think about how much money we're spending. In my industry, we're publicly funded, so the money that we get comes from the tax that everybody that goes to work has to pay. So we have to be really careful with how we spend it. So a lot of the technical things I do, I have to consider how much is this going to cost? Should we do it, or should we do something a little bit cheaper that still does the job? When I was at sixth form, I wasn't really sure what I wanted to do. I knew I wanted to work on the railway. I hadn't really come up with a career. And with a bit of luck, I found this course at university which was actually railway engineering. I did a bit of research into it, and it sounded like something I'd be interested in, so I applied for it. I got a place. So I went up to Sheffield, and went to Sheffield Hallam University for a couple of years, which was an absolutely great experience. There's a picture of me at my first graduation there with a couple of my engineering mates who are still one of them still in the railway, one of them now works for another company outside of the railway, but he's an engineer as well, and he works on bridges and big, heavy building things like that. So as I said, that was 2 years. I did a first year, which taught me a lot about the whole industry. My second year was specialised in signalling, so I got to learn a bit more about how signalling works, what it is, what it does, what it's for. And it was just generally a really good course, and it really made me realise how big the world of engineering was. I started to get really excited about this and potential where I could end up going to work and what I might end up doing with the rest of my life. So you end up spending a lot of time working. But I just said there at the bottom there, don't worry if it's a long way off for primary school, but if you get to a point and you don't really want to go to university, but you'd like to do engineering, you don't have to. You don't have to get a degree. It's not something that you can work in without that. There are plenty of great things like apprenticeships and courses you can do at college that will help you get into an engineering role. And a lot of the people I work with have come into the railway like that, and you see it's the same in every other industry. So what have I done as an engineer in my career since I've finished all my training? My first job I was a signalling designer. So that's not designing the signals that you might see when you get the train or the things that you see next to the track. I'd work on the circuits that made them work. So the actual electronics, the clever bits of kit that you don't see when you get on the train, but it's really important. It's hidden away in cabinets and big rooms next to the track. And they keep the signals working. They make points move back and forward so that trains can move from one track to another. And the signaling system actually makes sure that trains can't crash into each other. So that's a really important role to make sure that the circuits and the places we put the signals as well, it's all really important, because that sort of tells us how many trains we can run, it's how close the signals are together and things like that. So I worked in an office with a lot of people, and we would work all these things out. So just to tell you about the pictures on there, that photo on the left was one of the big projects I got to work on. It's called the Thameslink project, and you might have heard of it, you might not. And one of the big things, so that's London Bridge Station, and they redeveloped the station. It's an old, horrible station, and now it's really good. It's massive, it's got loads of space, and those two trains there was two of the first trains to go into those new platforms where they're going in after some of the work I'd done. So I'd done a design for this big project, and they went in there on a weekend, did all the wiring, tested it to make sure it was safe, and turned it all on. And thankfully, it was all done on time. And the little diagram at the bottom of the screen there with the red and green and the white, that's just a little extract from a layout diagram. So the colour on there are the changes we're going to make, and those sort of diagrams take a long time to produce and quite a lot of people to work on them. And there's a lot of calculations and things, and a lot of rules that we have to stick with. So it's quite a lot of thinking, and it's a really interesting thing to have been involved with. So after a few years doing the job as a designer, I got a job as a signalling expert. So I worked on projects to revise the standards in the railway industry. So a standard is basically to make sure that different components, different things work together So it's a bit like if you've ever had when you plug something in at home into the wall, that plug is designed to a standard to make sure that it will fit in the socket on your wall as there's a socket. So they have a standard to make sure that every plug in this country fits into the socket. And the railway has to have that because it makes sure that trains work with the signalling equipment and the electrification equipment, and they all work together without getting in each other's way. So there's a lot of different types of thing we have on the railway. There's a lot of standards. So I used to work on the signalling standards. We'd make sure that it was possible for people to build things that were within the rules that the standard said. I also got to go and look at other bits of equipment and learn a lot. And we also had some research projects that I worked on. So that was things we'd look at to try and make the rail industry better for the people. Because obviously we, as engineers on the rail industry, want to make sure the trains run on time, make sure it's reliable. Obviously we don't do the best all the time, a lot of people would argue. But that's what we want. We want a good railway that's reliable for the people that pay to come and use it. So we do research to look at improvements, things like trying to avoid leaves on the line. So you've probably all heard that one before. Your train's late because there's leaves on the line. And we, as engineers, tried to come up with ways around that. So again, there was some really, really good things that I got involved with in that job. So at the moment, as we've said, my job title is now a senior project engineer. So I get involved with all kinds of things in this job I'm doing now. So I will get involved in developing projects to improve the railway. So things like the picture there with the signal in it, that was a new signal we had to put in at London Victoria Station because the train drivers of long trains couldn't see the signal that was on the platform on the other side. So we had to put one there in the track so they can see what colour the signal was showing. And there's another one there of me on the right there. That's actually underneath, in a signal box, underneath the panel that the signalman uses to control the trains. And we're hopefully in a few weeks, we're going to go and replace the diagram that shows the signalman where all the trains are. So that's quite an interesting one. But what I have to do, I have to go and speak to the designers that I used to work with to get designs for all the work that we do. I have to review them to make sure that they're safe, that they're going to something that we can build. I have to make sure that we can actually get the materials for those sort of things. I have to speak to the guys that go out and do the work to make sure it's possible for them to do it. I have to get involved with the people that tell us how much money we can have to do the works and make sure that we can still do that. I also have to speak to the guys who go out and do the work and make sure that they've got everything they need to do it safely, because that's really important. We send these guys out into a really dangerous environment where they're working with trains, with electricity. We need to make sure that they're safe, they can do it without getting hurt. And there's so many things that I do. I would be here all day if I listed it. But again, just to speak to all the different people it's a really rewarding job, and to be able to make the railway better when I can go out or I get on the train and I go past things that I know we've done work on, it's really satisfying for me to say, yeah, our team did that. So it's a very good and rewarding job for me at the moment. So what do I enjoy about being an engineer? Well, firstly, the variety of things I've done. So again, I've put a few pictures here. So there's one of me on the left there I've actually got a level crossing barrier across my shoulder there that we were repairing at the time. That was on part of my training course. And just pictures there of the different ones of things I've been involved with. So again, there's a signal box with the diagram there, signal that we've renewed. A picture on the top right is one of the first pictures I had of me on the railway. I'm actually rolling out a piece of material that stops weeds growing through the track. That was when I went to see a track renewal. And the one of me in the bottom there in a museum with the signalling equipment with the levers that they use, sort of old-fashioned equipment. And then a big set of points there that our team renewed recently where I work now. So again, we take all the bits and pieces off there and put new ones in, and it just makes the railway more reliable. Interesting, and it's very challenging at times as well. So a couple of photos there. Things don't always go right. It does make us laugh occasionally. The picture on the left there was actually a failure I went to with some of the people I used to work with. That you can probably see it's a little bit flat. That's because one of the components in that box had actually exploded. That was caused by somebody's litter going down the track, and it landed on the third rail, which powers the trains down here in the southeast, and it basically caused the thing to blow up, which isn't great. So we had to go out and fix that. And the one on the right was a project I was working on a couple of years ago, we were replacing a level crossing, all the barriers and the lights, we were replacing it all with better, newer equipment. And the digger that you can see there hit one of the water pipes underneath the level crossing and caused a bit of a fountain in there, which again was a bit of a problem. But we managed to get around it and got people out, and they gave the locals their water supply back. So we have challenges to overcome, and they keep us interested a lot. I get to work with a lot of different people. So there's a picture on the left there with a huge group of guys that I've worked with a few times, and they went out, and that big bit of track there, that whole lot was taken out and replaced because it wasn't very reliable. The track was old and worn out, signalling the points, it was all old, it needed replacing because it kept fading and kept making the trains late. So at the long weekend, they went out, they took all the track out, put it all back in with that huge crane that's behind the guys there. And you get a real good team spirit, and you spend a lot of time with the people you work with, and you build a really good relationship with them. So I really look forward to coming to work some mornings, and we have a good chat, and we have a laugh, and we just enjoy ourselves while we're doing our work. The picture on the right there was a team of us that did a network rail relay in Milton Keynes. We all ran a marathon between us, so it's 26 miles, and we all took part. So it extends outside of work as well, and it's just a really good, happy environment to work in. And I've been to a lot of different places, so there's a few photos there from trips I've managed to get myself on when I've been working. So there's one of me there underneath a train in a depot, and that was in Spain. Picture of me on the steam engine. I went to Norfolk to go and attend a committee meeting. That was interesting to go out and see some really modern kit fitted to a really old steam engine. So that's a really different thing for me to have seen. And the two places I've been at the bottom there, I had a trip to Scotland to go and look at some signalling equipment that uses radio waves instead of cable. So that was interesting for me. And then in the bottom right there, I had a trip to Italy a few years ago to go and attend a research conference and see what things people are working on to try and improve even more in the future, so we can run more trains on our existing track and hopefully make the railway a little bit cheaper as well. So that's the end of my presentation. Thanks very much for listening. And if you've got any questions, now would be the time to pass on to your teachers.
Brilliant, thanks, Glenn. St Joseph's and Tadmor. If you have any, Tramore, I'd say Tramore. If you have any questions for Glenn, please can you type them into the chat facility, and as I said before, Glenn will read them out and give his answers. Can you put your camera back on, Glenn, as well, please?
Is that right? Is it not closed?
No, it's not up yet.
Okay.
Ah, there it is. Wonderful. Perfect. And I think your first question has come through.
So I've got a question from St Joseph's. Good morning. Question saying, what are the other fields of engineering are there to work in? Wow, there's absolutely loads. I mean, obviously I've just touched on the railway. Within the railway itself, you've got civil engineering, which is things like buildings, bridges, earthworks, which hold the railway up. You've got electrical engineering, power for the trains, power for the signalling itself, track engineering. Then outside of that, there's more than you can think of. You've got the automotive industry, which is for cars, aviation for aeroplanes, and obviously construction within all of that as well. There's so many different fields of engineering. There's electrical engineering, whether you're working as an electrician in houses, you could be working on huge substations that get the electricity from the power station to your house. You could be working in a power station. Mechanical engineering is in just about everything you can think of. Cars, trains, boats, planes, they all have mechanics in them, the way things work together. Pretty much, if you can think about it, it's got some sort of engineering in it. There are absolutely loads of things you can do. We've got the next question from Tran Mort says, do I know how a train engine is built? I personally don't. I know they're built in the factory, and that's about the limit of mine. Normally, I think there's a lot of bits of the train are all built separately. So things like the engine itself would be built in one place. The outside of the train that you see on the track would be built somewhere else. That's called the body shell. The wheels will be built in another place, and they'll all be brought together in a factory, and then they have someone fix them all together. So we've got another one from St Joseph's saying, what's the thing that's gone most horribly wrong, and how did you solve it? So I think that in terms of projects I've been involved with, that was probably the photo that I showed in my presentation there of the water pipe that was hit. So what happened, the guys had to phone the water boards, the people that are responsible for maintaining those pipes, and they came and they fixed it. And we were very lucky they did it, because that was a Sunday afternoon, we had the railway closed, and we needed it to be back open on the Monday morning so people could get to work. Thankfully, someone came out quick and repaired it, and we did manage to get the trains back on time on the Monday morning. So I think despite having gone horribly wrong, as you say, we had a very lucky escape there, really. So the next question comes from Tran Moore again. What are the different components of the track? So the track, the actual part of the track engineering starts right at the bottom, away from what you can see. So the picture of me you saw rolling out that piece of material, so it's dug right down, and you've got there might be an embankment or something like that underneath it that supports, that's just the ground basically. So then we normally put that mat down, and that lets water out, but it stops the weeds coming up, because when the weeds come up, they can cause problems with water getting away from the track. So on top of that, we put ballast, which is the stones that you can see if you've ever been on the train. So what the ballast does is it holds the track in place, and it lets water get out from it, because if the water backs up, it's just not good. It can cause all kinds of problems, and it can cause things to move. So on top of the ballast, the things that go across the track are called sleepers. So they're normally made of concrete or wood or steel in some places, or there's even plastic ones now. And what the sleeper does is it holds the track at the right width apart so that the trains can run on it. So I can tell you off the top of my head, it is 4 foot 8.5 inches, or 1,435 millimeters. That is the distance between the two rails. So obviously the rails are the next component that sit on top of the sleepers, and they're the bit that the train actually runs on. So the rails are made of steel. They're very heavy, very, very heavy, 60 kilograms per meter they weigh normally. And they are held onto the sleepers by these things called track clips, and the clips are pulled in with a special tool, and they make sure it stays in place so that they don't fall over when the trains are running on it. And the next part of that says, someone has also said, what will the signalling on the track look like in the future? So in the future, they're already looking, in Europe it's already used quite a lot. There's a system that we're using, and it gets rid of line side signals, so you wouldn't really see the signals that look like traffic lights anymore. They would be replaced by a sign, and what would happen is, instead of getting lights on a signal next to the track, the train will have a screen in the cab that tells the driver exactly how far they're allowed to drive before they have to stop, before they crash into the train in front, or before there's something in the way, and it will tell them how fast they're allowed to go as well. And that system will as well automatically be able to stop the train if it's going to crash, or if there's going to be an accident, something like that. So it's even safer than what we have now, because we still already have quite a safe system. So the answer to that question is it'll look like nothing, because the signalling will virtually disappear. It'll just be moved inside the train and away from what you can see next to the track. I had another question from St Joseph saying, what project or job am I most proud of in my career so far? So I'd probably have to say that was the Thameslink programme. That was one of the jobs I worked on when I learned, and I said it was what the Thameslink programme did, it improved the number of trains we could run through central London. So from sort of where I live down towards the south coast, I live about halfway down to Brighton, and there's a route that goes from Brighton up to London, and then it weaves its way through the middle of London and carries on up towards Bedford, up to the Midlands there. And the amount of people using the trains there were so many people trying to get on. There was too many trains to actually be able to fit through London Bridge, which is one of the biggest stations on the route. So they had to be diverted around a different way in the evening because we just couldn't fit them on the track. So the Thameslink programme brought in the whole new station at London Bridge, which was completely rebuilt to put in to sort of change where the platforms were and put in more tracks and make sure that the trains could come through where we needed to. And then there's 2 more tracks between London Bridge and Blackfriars, which is the next station on the Thameslink route. So a lot of the work I did was around London Bridge, and the work we did basically meant that they could open the station as it is now. So we call it enabling work, which means work you need to do before you can actually do your main project. So the work we did tied in with what the guys building the station were doing, and it kept the signalling running, or the old signalling equipment running, while they built the new station. And then once they finished the new bits of the station, they put a brand new signalling system on top of it that completely replaced everything we'd done. But every stage that we worked on was finished on time. It was a really interesting job. There was a lot of work, and some of the guys I work with on that I'm still really good friends with as well now. So that whole project really was a good starting point for my career. So we've had a question from Tranmore says, is it hard to work out all the tracks and where the trains go when there are lots of them? Well, yeah, it is. So there's a whole department that we have in the industry that's got people from Network Rail and people from the companies that run the trains. And they have to go and work out how many trains, so they work out how many trains we can run. So the maximum number of trains we can have on any bit of railway anywhere is limited by the signalling system and what it can do. So there will be a maximum by that. But obviously, where different lines join and split and cross each other, you have to sort of figure out where the trains are going to pass each other there, make sure they're not going to get each other's way, because when you're on a train, you don't want to be sitting waiting for other trains to go in front of you. So we have this whole department, and they sit in their office, and that's what they do all year. They work out. So the timetable itself changes twice a year, but in between that, they're trying to work out if they can slot new trains in, if some trains get taken out, if they're not very well used, if they can fit more carriages on the trains, because sometimes you can't do that because platforms aren't long enough. And just to be able to figure out, so that's a very, very analytical job. You have to really think and look and know little things about the railway, like why trains take so long to get from one station to the next station, because there might be things in the way like junctions and things like that slow trains down, or just the number of people as well. Busy stations, trains have to stop for a couple of minutes because it takes too long for people to get on and off. So they think about all these things, and that's a really, really complicated job. But I'm sure that's really interesting as well. St Joseph's have asked, what key advice would you give to young people interested in becoming an engineer? So the first thing to think about is what industry would you be interested in? Hopefully that you might have picked up from me that I absolutely love working in the railway industry. It's something that really interests me. I would say look for something that interests you. So if you're interested in aeroplanes, go for aviation or cars. Look at cars. And also don't think that engineering is just going out wearing a hard hat and a high-vis vest or something like that, because it's not all about going out on sites and seeing things being done. There's a lot of engineering is a real lot of thinking in the background, and you have to do a lot of working things out before you get to the point where you can build something. So the range of careers is massive. I would say if you want to get into engineering, just go for it. Just keep looking at where you might want to work, as I said, the industry as opposed to a specific job, and be open-minded. Don't say, now if you're especially at primary school, you might have an idea what you want to do, and that's really good, but if you don't worry about it, because I didn't personally, and I ended up with a really good career that I love. So just keep learning, because that's one thing I do. I'm always learning as I am now. And keep picking things up, stay interested in your subject. That's the important thing, really. So Tranmore have said, how long does it take to build a section of track, and how does it feel to be an engineer? Well, actually, the actual building a piece of track doesn't take very long at all. I mean, the track team that I work with, I have an equivalent team in my department that do track renewals, and they can build a brand new section of track on site in probably in about 12 hours. They could do sort of 100 meters worth of track in 12 hours. The complication we have is that a lot of the equipment we work on is already there, so we have to remove the old equipment before we build some new equipment. So most of the time when you see there's engineering works at weekends, that's when sort of my team and my colleagues are out there renewing equipment. So the normal window we get would be a day, basically. We would get what we call a possession, and that would give us from first thing Sunday morning until first thing Monday morning. And in that window, as I said, our track team could probably relay about 100 to 150 meters worth of track, and that includes taking out what's there already, and they would then remove all the old stuff. That would go to a recycling centre. It would either be reused somewhere else if the equipment's good enough, or it would be scrapped and we'd get paid for the scrap. Then they would put the new equipment in, then they would connect it all into what's either side of it, because the track's all welded now, so they weld all the rails together so there's no joints anymore. And I say that takes about a day, and sometimes if we're lucky we might get a 2-day or even longer window, and then if we get a longer window of opportunity like that, we'll do even more than that. So how does it feel to be an engineer? It feels really good. As I said at the end of my show, when I get to go on the train and I see things that I know my team have renewed, or things that I've been involved with myself, or that I know that I've been involved in a project and I've helped to make it a little bit better, I've made it cheaper, or we've got something that's more reliable at the end of it, that's really satisfying, and I absolutely love it. It's a really good thing to be doing. So St. Joseph said, how many people do I work with on a project usually? That is a really good question. So it really depends on the size of the project. So some projects, it might just be me and my team. It'll be a really simple, we just need to go and change one signal or one piece of equipment next to the track, and that's literally just me and a few of my colleagues. So I might only talk to 2 or 3 people. Some big projects, so I just got involved yesterday. We have a big track renewal going on at Christmas, and we were discussing this over email, and there was at least 15 people on the discussion email that we were going, so that's quite a lot. But that's just the engineering side of it in the office before we've gone out to build it. So including the guys on the track, there could be hundreds of people involved in some of these projects, although I wouldn't have to talk to all of them, obviously. But yeah, the number of people involved in each project can vary, I say, from 2 to 200. It could be a massive project. So that's quite interesting as well. So Tranmore there said, how long have I been an engineer for, and how long do I work for each day? So I started my engineering journey, I would say, with my university course, which was 2008. And then I got my first job in 2010. So I've been working as an engineer full time for 9 years, just over 9 years, plus the 2 years I was studying at university. So I'm probably what people would call a lifer, which means I'm going to end up working on the railway for the rest of my life, because that's just the way my brain works. And in terms of how long I work each day, so my contract says I have to work 35 hours a week, which means I work at least 7 hours a day. Sometimes I do a little bit more. At the moment, my team is quite good, so I'm not having to stretch above that too often. Normally I'll work between 35 and 40 hours a week, which is quite a standard working week for most people, and I'm quite lucky I don't have to do too much outside of my normal daytime work at the moment, although sometimes that changes. So that was the last question for now. If anybody's got any more.
I've got one actually, Glenn. So you will work in evenings, though, won't you? Overnight and at weekends and Christmas holidays and that sort of thing.
So the guys that go out on the track and do the renewals, yes, they will go in. They generally work. So my team I work in at the moment, I'm the engineer, and we have a manager as well. So I used to be the manager, and I've now moved into the engineer's post, which is far more. And then we have a team of managers below that have staff that they're responsible for, who actually go out and do the work. those guys that go out and do the work will generally work on a rotation. So they'll go out and they'll do nights and weekends as well as daytime work. Because I'm in the renewals department, we can't actually renew stuff during the day, during the midweek, because there are lots of trains running and lots of people on the trains. So a lot of that work is done at night and at weekends when less people, obviously there's no one using the train generally because there's no overnight, and less people on the weekends. Sometimes I'll see what the guys are up to and go and have a catch up with them, and I know a lot of the guys that we employ that do that, which is nice for me because they're a lot of the most nice guys, so it's good for me to see them and catch up.
Okay, right. So I've got a little message here from Tramor. Thank you very much for informing us all about being an engineer on the railway. We have found it very interesting. Thank you, Tramor, and I'm sure.
You're very welcome.
Yep.
If you've got any more
It,
to your teacher.
Yep, so thank you, St. Joseph's. Thank you very much too as well. So what I'll do now, I shall close down the meeting. It's been a great 3/4 an hour. And thank you all very much for participating. And I'll send you an email shortly, Glenn. And because we've got other events to organise. So thank you all very much. I'm going to shut down the meeting now. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you.